The sun had barely risen over the horizon, casting long shadows across my ranch. The pond, usually calm and reflective, shimmered faintly as the morning mist hovered above the surface. Birds stirred in the trees, unaware of the chaos about to unfold. Then I saw them. A group from the HOA, arrogantly setting up tents and camping gear along the very edge of my pond. Their laughter echoed through the trees, sharp and intrusive. They had no right to be here, no legal claim, no permission, and yet they acted as if the land itself belonged to them. I watched quietly, knowing the truth of my property and the quiet warning the pond carried. Beneath its placid surface lay months of accumulated bull and horse waste, a natural byproduct of the ranch. The pond wasn't just water, it was a fortress of consequences, invisible to the untrained eye but deadly in its reality. As they unloaded coolers and chairs, completely oblivious, the forest seemed to hold its breath. Every splash, every careless step, was a ticking clock counting down to an inevitable lesson. I leaned against the fence, calm, deliberate, knowing that their arrogance had led them straight into a trap they could neither anticipate nor escape. Some intrusions are met with quiet observation. Others demand consequences. And sometimes, nature itself becomes the ultimate teacher. Hit subscribe. Watch till the end. The ranch had always been a sanctuary, a place where the land, the animals, and the quiet rhythms of life created a balance few could understand. My pond, nestled in a low dip surrounded by rolling pastures, had been the heart of that sanctuary. Over the years, it had absorbed rainwater, runoff, and, inevitably, the waste of bulls and horses grazing nearby. It was a natural system, part of the ecosystem I had nurtured, but invisible to those who saw only a reflection of the surface. 4 months, HOA officials had been circling the property with thinly veiled disdain. Their complaints were petty at first: noise, smells, fences allegedly out of alignment. But slowly, their actions escalated. Notices were sent, inspectors appeared unannounced, and an undercurrent of entitlement grew stronger with each visit. They saw only what they wanted, control over a space that was not theirs, and ignored the reality of life on the ranch. That morning, I watched from a distance as they set up camp by the pond. Tents were pitched, chairs unfolded, and coolers opened. They laughed and joked, completely oblivious to the warning signs around them. Their arrogance was tangible, pressing against the tranquility of the land. Each careless step near the pond brought them closer to a reality they could not anticipate. I moved quietly among the pastures, checking the fences, surveying the animals, ensuring everything was in place. The bulls and horses were calm, but their presence added a silent weight to the scene, a latent threat invisible to the untrained eye. The pond itself, calm and reflective, held the power of consequence beneath its serene surface. As the morning sun climbed, the air seemed to thicken. Shadows of trees stretched over the water, and the forest whispered quietly in the wind. The stage was set, the players unaware that their intrusion carried risk far beyond annoyance or petty authority. They had assumed that their position within the HOA granted them power over the land, over the animals, over the natural systems I had nurtured for decades. But they had misjudged everything. They did not understand the nature of the ranch, the weight of the animals, or the quiet intelligence of preparation. They saw only opportunity, entitlement, and imagined authority. Meanwhile, the pond, the pasture, and the creatures that inhabited it were ready to deliver lessons in consequence, subtle but unforgettable. By the time I stepped closer to observe, everything had aligned: the sun, the shadows, the animals, and the oblivious intruders. The quiet hum of the morning carried a tension, an unspoken warning. The confrontation was inevitable, a collision of arrogance and preparedness, entitlement and consequence, ignorance and knowledge. The ranch held its breath, and I knew the moment of reckoning would come, not with force alone, but with inevitability. The HOA campers laughed and unpacked, their footsteps light and careless along the edge of the pond. They had no idea what lay beneath the calm, mirrored surface. Months of bull and horse waste had accumulated, making the water thick, foul, and entirely unsafe for intrusion. The pond, silent and still, had become a trap waiting to be triggered. I watched from the fence line, calm and deliberate. Every action of theirs, Every step into the shallow banks, every careless toss of a cooler, was a miscalculation. They believed authority could protect them, that entitlement granted immunity, but they had misread the land entirely. The forest held its quiet tension, shadows stretching long and ominous across the water. The campers set up chairs, spread blankets, and approached the pond as if it were a simple recreational space. I could see the recklessness in their posture, the overconfidence in their smiles. The pond, however, carried consequences. Beneath the surface, the natural waste created a hazard no one could ignore, stinky, slippery, and entirely disruptive. As they leaned closer to the water, I stepped forward, calm and unhurried. My presence alone was a warning. The forest whispered through the trees, the animals shifted subtly, and the air thickened with anticipation. Nature, the ranch, and preparation aligned perfectly. The moment drew near. A foot sank into the muddy edge, the water bubbling slightly around it. The realization of their miscalculation hit, but too late. I remained still, observing as entitlement collided with consequence. The pond would not be ignored, the land would not be disrespected, and the arrogance of those who assumed control over what wasn't theirs was about to be humbled. The sun had climbed high enough to cast sharp, shimmering reflections across the pond, illuminating the ripples of the water and the surrounding grasses swaying gently in the breeze. From the edge of the property, I watched silently, my posture calm, calculated, a quiet contrast to the oblivious chaos unfolding mere feet away. The HOA campers laughed, their voices carrying over the wind, blending with the distant calls of birds and the soft hum of insects, unaware that every movement brought them closer to an unavoidable reckoning. The pond itself seemed alive that day, a silent observer of arrogance and entitlement. Months of accumulated bull and horse waste had created a dense, slick layer just beneath the surface, subtle in appearance, lethal in consequence. It smelled faintly of iron and decay, a natural warning sign ignored by those who thought authority could shield them from consequence. Each camper moved with confidence, setting up chairs, tossing blankets, and approaching the water's edge without hesitation. They were blind to the invisible danger lurking beneath, as unsuspecting as children wandering into a storm. I stepped closer, my boots crunching softly on the gravel path, yet I made no sudden movements. The cattle and horses grazing nearby were alert, their muscles taut with readiness. They shifted subtly, their presence alone amplifying the tension in the air. The trees surrounding the pond cast long, dark shadows, and the gentle ripple of the wind across the water seemed to whisper warnings, silent, ominous, and ignored. A camper, emboldened by ignorance, stepped into the shallows. His foot sank slightly into the sludge, a soft, wet sound beneath his confident step. A ripple spread across the pond, carrying a faint, foul odor that briefly drew his attention. Confusion flickered across his face, quickly replaced by laughter. "It's just mud," he muttered, shrugging it off, oblivious to the stench and slipperiness beneath. Another camper reached out to toss a bottle into the pond. It splashed loudly, the sound masking the subtle hiss and gurgle of the sludge beneath the water. The pond, patient and unyielding, remained calm, but every bubble and ripple was a reminder of the force concealed beneath the surface. Nature, preparation, and consequence were aligned perfectly, ready to correct the imbalance caused by arrogance and entitlement. I raised my hand slowly, a signal to the animals nearby. They moved in perfect synchrony, shifting, stomping lightly, creating vibrations that traveled through the ground, through the water, and into the unsuspecting campers' feet. A sense of unease began to spread. Their confident laughter faltered, replaced by uncertainty as they sensed something was wrong, but the warning came too late. The first splash erupted suddenly. One camper's foot slipped into the deeper muck near the center of the pond, and he let out a startled yell. The sludge, thick and unyielding, clung to his boots, pulling at him subtly but firmly. Panic rippled through the group as more feet sank into the murky edges, the foul smell rising into the air like a warning that could no longer be ignored. The pond, once calm, had become an agent of natural consequence, delivering justice without haste but with precision. Their shouts and scrambling amplified the tension, each movement worsening their predicament. They tried to pull themselves out, only to slip again as the muck held firm. The smell was overwhelming, the realization of their miscalculation dawning in every frantic glance exchanged between campers. The arrogance that had guided them into this situation evaporated, replaced by fear, disbelief, and the dawning understanding that they were outmatched, not by force alone, but by preparation, awareness, and the quiet power of consequence. I remained on the edge of the pond, calm and deliberate. Every heartbeat seemed to echo in the forest, in the water, and across the yard. The animals, now fully alert, moved subtly to enforce space, ensuring no one could escape without acknowledging the lesson. The campers flailed, slipping and sliding, each attempt at control failing spectacularly. They had assumed authority over a space they did not understand, over forces they could not perceive, and now the very land had risen against them, not with malice, but with inevitability. Time seemed to stretch infinitely. The sounds of splashing water, frustrated cries, and the faint hum of insects and birds created a surreal soundtrack to the unfolding chaos. Every movement the campers made only worsened their situation. Their sense of entitlement, their assumed power, and their belief in the protection of law were meaningless against the alignment of preparation, observation, and natural consequence. Finally, some began to grasp the truth. Faces pale, breaths ragged, eyes wide, they realized that their intrusion had consequences far beyond what they imagined. The pond, the muck, the animals, and the land itself had conspired silently, patiently, and inevitably to teach a lesson that words could not convey. In that moment, the imbalance of power was undeniable. The campers' confidence shattered, replaced by fear, humility, and grudging acknowledgement of the boundaries they had crossed. The lesson was clear: entitlement provokes, ignorance escalates, and preparation ensures that the arrogant always meet the consequences of their actions. I stepped forward, boots firm on the edge of the pond, observing the aftermath. The air was thick with the smell of muck and panic. Shadows had lengthened, the sun reflecting off the disturbed water in chaotic patterns. The campers, humbled and shocked, began retreating, careful now not to repeat mistakes. The forest, the pond, and the ranch returned slowly to calm, but the lesson lingered in the air, etched into every surface and echoed in every trembling step. Some lessons are harsh. Some consequences are unavoidable. And some arrogance, once exposed to preparation and inevitability, is humbled completely, without violence, without threat, but with undeniable clarity. The morning tension had dissipated, leaving only the lingering scent of muck and the memory of chaos. The HOA campers, once loud and confident, had retreated from the pond's edge, their arrogance replaced with humility, disbelief, and the bitter taste of lessons learned too late. They had underestimated the land, the animals, and the preparation that governed every inch of the ranch. The pond, now calm once more, reflected the sky and the surrounding trees, hiding beneath its surface the power it had quietly wielded. It had delivered justice without violence, without confrontation. Its strength lay in inevitability. Those who ignored warnings, disrespected boundaries, and relied on entitlement discovered firsthand that consequences are patient but absolute. I surveyed the yard and the surrounding pastures, animals grazing calmly, unaware of the subtle forces they had contributed to the lesson. My friend and I moved deliberately, restoring order, checking the edges of the pond, and ensuring that every precaution remained in place. The land itself had spoken, and the message was clear: intrusion without respect is met with consequence, and ignorance of natural systems carries real-world repercussions. Word of the incident spread quietly, a whispered cautionary tale among neighbors and HOA members. The arrogance that had brought the campers to the pond had been dismantled not by confrontation alone, but by preparation, understanding, and the alignment of natural consequence with human vigilance. Respect, foresight, and caution became the takeaways. Entitlement and recklessness were exposed as weakness. The ranch, once again serene, held a new quiet authority. Shadows played across the pond, the trees whispered in the wind, and the lessons of that morning remained etched into every corner of the property. Those who witnessed, even from afar, understood the subtle but undeniable truth: boundaries matter, preparation matters, and nature itself can enforce the law when humans fail to respect it. In the end, the incident became more than just a confrontation. It became a testament to vigilance, patience, and the quiet power of consequence. Arrogance provokes, entitlement blinds, but preparation endures. And sometimes, the most effective lessons are delivered not with anger, but with inevitability, etched silently in mud, water, and the enduring strength of the land itself.